Hello, Rena.
Why, hello there.
Welcome, everyone, to a free association conversation between Rena K and myself, Dr. Bach Ho. We're both organic intelligence coaches. We help people reduce suffering and increase capacity to handle more in life with ease using the protocols of organic intelligence. In these live stream free association conversations, Rena and I try to aim both at people who are completely new to organic intelligence and people who already know its basics. We try to find the balance. Today, our topic is, why is relaxation so hard? Last week, we talked about, the topic was relaxation. I forgot the title, but it was about relaxation. The title was, If You Can't Relax, Don't. And a lot of stuff came up in that conversation. And then in our post analysis, I thought there's more here. And then we came up with this current, why is relaxation so hard? So you had mentioned in work with people that people can build up intensity and reach a, a level or threshold of intensity at which point they're finally ready to cool down from that activation or excitation process. And the cooling down process can be rough, can be hard. Why? Yeah.
Well, I'm going to add a caveat to that.
Okay.
It's something that can be challenging for our biology until our biology learns to do that. And part of the reason to work with a coach who's trained in the organic intelligence methodology is coaches are specifically trained how to help people in that come down phase in a way that would be not as hard in the moment, like in a session, or would be even unnoticeable, right? So part of what we'll do is try to distract the biology or let the biology do its thing by distracting the conscious mind a little bit and getting it out of the way because that coming down process, a lot of us are used to living in high states of intensity. Like we live with high levels of activation and oftentimes high levels of activation on a regular basis that are beyond what we refer to and have referred to in other videos, the organic intensity threshold, like the just right Goldilocks spot of how much activation there is, and then being able to come down in the deactivation. But I don't know that, I think there's a lot of reasons why that deactivation process can be difficult, like rest, right? Or letting go or yielding. These are all similar phrases. May not be something our biology has had a lot of experience in, or if it did have that experience, it would get interrupted at all kinds of times. And so it can be just challenging because very often we haven't had easy, gentle coming down into rest that doesn't include, say, a super fast, precipitous coming down, right? That some people will call like collapse. So it's very hard for people to learn how to come down without collapse because that collapse is very often a part of their biological experience.
Thank you. My impulse in this very moment, maybe to take us a little bit off where you might be, you might have thought, but this feels right to me. Um, as you were speaking, I was wondering, are we talking about people living life in general, whether they know about organic intelligence or not, relaxation, excitation, or are we talking about specific, more specialized work in an organic intelligence session with activation, threshold, deactivation? Holding that question in mind, I don't have an answer right now. Maybe both, or we're kind of flipping between the two. Here's what's coming to mind. I, for I'm thinking of someone who doesn't know a lot about organic intelligence. I think we organic intelligence coaches, we think a lot about excitation, relaxation, up, down, arousal, de-arousal, intensification, de-intensification, because it's so fundamental to the organic intelligence work of reaching exact organic intensity thresholds. I wonder, do most people in life think in terms of action, rest, excitation, relaxation? And I wonder how we would speak to them, because I was just thinking earlier today, probably before getting deep into the weeds of OI, I didn't think a lot about action and rest. Obviously, I sleep and I take breaks from work, but when we're just living, are people thinking now this is activation, this is rest, this is arousal, this is they don't think like that, I think.
Correct.
But
I'd agree.
you would agree, is it always happening, or it's just wow, this is really getting so our concepts of activation and deactivation, which are so fundamental to organic intelligence, if we're introducing them to someone who doesn't know OI at all, organic intelligence, it may be like, where's this coming from? It's kind of abstract. I don't think in those terms. I just think wake up, coffee, breakfast, talk with family, go to work, get stressed out, do this, take a break, etc. Go to the gym, make dinner. I just have these things. That's what I think about day to day. I don't think about excitation, relaxation. So
Yeah.
I know I kind of like threw a wrench in where we might have been going,
Well,
but
no, I think it's great because I think you're right. Most people are not weighing and taking into consideration in terms of their choices in life whether or not their biology wants to work harder or whether it wants to take a break. Like very often, people are not pausing to actually even consider that. And I think there's probably two large groups of people, say. So there'll be the clients who come who will, and we can hear this out and about, it's like, I just can't relax. I'm just always stressed out. I'm not like, as soon as I try to relax, my mind just starts going. As soon as I'm have a moment to rest, all I can think about is all these things I have to do. Like that people would say, I'm unable to relax. Or sometimes they'll show up as I really can't fall asleep. And or if I fall asleep and I wake up, I can't fall back to sleep. So there'll be a lot of people who will say, yeah, it feels like they're revving inside all the time. And they will say, I can't relax or I can't let go. And then there's the opposite spectrum, which would be people who go, I can't get enough energy to do anything, right? I just don't seem to have any pep. I don't have any mojo. I don't have any energy to be able to do life. I feel like I just lay around, I procrastinate, and I just can't get things going. That would be the opposite end. That would be a little bit more like referring to what I was saying, this collapse idea, where the biology just knows how to go in, it knows how to do 0 to 100 or maybe 20 to 80, but it doesn't
mm,
know how to do that mid range, right? And
yes, okay.
so we have people who are one, either staying up really high in the 80 to 100 range. You have people who are perpetually in the low 0 to 20% energy range, right? And then you have people who will go up and then they try to come down a little bit and can't, or people who try to go up a little bit and they can't, like something blocks them. So my sense is that um, we have a lot of people who are struggling to legitimately, deeply just feel rest. Because even in the collapse state, they're usually not feeling rest. And by rest, I'm thinking what's coming to
Mm.
my mind is maybe actually what's happening in the internal milieu, what's happening in the internal state. So you could be lying on a couch and have these horrific movies playing in your head, right? Or you could be, lying in a hammock somewhere and all you feel is all kinds of unpleasant sensations, or you've got your thoughts go, right? Like, so it's possible to look like you're resting, but what's happening in the internal state is not resting. What if you had a
That's
thought about
interesting.
that?
So could someone could someone's body be characteristically collapsed, flaccid, low energy, while they characteristically feel perturbed and haunted and threatened.
Yeah,
Is that
right. That's what I would mean by
okay?
that, right? It could go on
So
either end of the
yeah.
spectrum, right?
So they would be in some sense relaxed, but not really because their body, if they're just hanging loose on a couch, uh, in contrast to someone who's super tense and can't hang loose on a
Right.
couch, they would be relaxed in that sense. And this is getting
Behaviorally.
sorry,
Behaviorally. So their
behaviorally.
behavior looks like a relaxed because they're minimal mobilization. They're not doing a whole lot.
But they would
Behaviorally.
also feel the relaxation and softness and non-tenseness of the muscles, right? They would just feel like, oh,
So,
or
right. So there could be, if there's that blah, I use the phrase
yeah.
hypotonic. So the
Mhm.
muscles can be very hypotonic. But they could be lying on a couch and be hypertonic. They can still have a lot of muscle tension in the body. They could also
Yeah.
have a lot of internal, distressing kinds of things going on inside. And I would say that's not being restful either. So restful would have to be some kind of congruence between both what one is doing, so the behavior, the action, and then what's happening on the internal,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like what
Yeah.
one's internal state is.
Okay. Now, sorry, I suddenly have the impulse to transition because I feel like what we were talking about in preparation for this live stream was really important. So if you'll just allow me this kind of wonkiness, you had mentioned something in the prior week and in our pre-live stream conversation that I think was really interesting. This is something you said to me, and I want to reflect it to you and have you elaborate. So, in organic intelligence, what we're trying to do with clients, one thing we're trying to do is help them reach certain special intensity levels, these organic intensity thresholds. And one way we do that is that if a client is currently chill and at baseline and oriented, meaning that their senses can connect to the environment easily and automatically. They're at this baseline. They will start having arousal to a certain threshold and then de-arousal, and then arousal to a higher threshold and then de-arousal, and then arousal to a higher threshold and de-arousal. This all happens in our free association conversation during session. And then we're building our way towards this specific organic intensity thresholds. And then at which point, then we catalyze the rest period. So the main point I'm trying to make right now is en route to the organic intensity threshold, we may be helping clients reach a lower threshold. Okay, we reach that, a little bit of rest, and then okay, we talk about your date or your mom or work or what's good about your mom, what's bad about your mom, or the weather, whatever. We talk about whatever, and then there's a higher intensity, and then rest, higher, and then at some point we reach an organic intensity threshold. So let's just hold that in mind, and then there's a rest period. And something that you landed last week or with me in private conversation is that there are also thresholds on the way down, not only on the way up. And there's a question of whether this idea is part of organic intelligence or not. That's an issue of what is part of organic intelligence, what's not. But either way, we'll get to that maybe. But this idea I found really interesting and impactful, and it may be a rephrasing or something of that it is already in organic intelligence. But either way, would you please speak to that because I found it to be
Yeah.
really important. Yeah.
Yeah, and
If and
I've been
thank you for
thinking
allowing
about
me to
that.
transition. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I've been thinking about that, because one of the things you and I both appreciate is clarity in language and making sure that we don't confuse concepts. And
Yes.
so the idea of a threshold is exactly what you just described, that it is part of the system going up. It's part of the activation or arousal process. And oftentimes what I see is when a system is attempting to come down, it may find that that is a difficult process. So one, it can show up as just what would I say? Like almost like a glitchiness. Like the person is starting to come down, their system's starting to come down, and then there's a little like, oh, this is uncomfortable. And their body might show that. They might show it by suddenly interjecting some kind of more, some kind of comment that's more on the arousal side of things.
Mm,
Um, and so there you'll see this, and so then as a coach, part of our job is help them to get through that and come back into that allowance of the system coming down. The other way of thinking about it, I think, is that sometimes like there's these plateaus. Like the system comes down a bit, it kind of plateaus, and then it comes down again some more and it plateaus. And that might be in a moment, but I also think that that can happen in just one's capacity to approach deep restful states, to allow the biology to deactivate, also integrate like that's habitually,
yeah.
conditionally, that's been challenging for people to do. And so when I'm working with people, I'll notice that, well, maybe they can come down a certain amount, and there's only so much I can, as you use the word catalyze, there's only so much I can catalyze the coming down before they're going to jump into something that's more arousing. And we'll be back on that arousal train again. And as people work in organic intelligence on a regular basis, their ability to come down into deeper and deeper states of ease and rest and that orientation or the ability to orient or pleasure, that increases their ability. So I used last week the idea there's a thresholds that they are coming down. I'll probably revise that here online. That probably threshold is not the right word. I kind of like the idea of plateau better. That there's a way in which coming down doesn't just easily happen, and we have to build capacity to allow that to happen.
May I interrupt? Sorry, or actually, your call. Do you want to continue or
No, I was
okay?
assuming
I,
that I
I'm
asked them
I'm
all to you.
I'm feeling so just to the to whoever's listening, I'm going to be getting into technical mode, assuming the audience knows about organic intelligence because I feel like the important I have some important things to say. So if you're new, I'm sorry that this will be kind of complicated. Um, the first half was about trying to talk to new people, but let's just keep going. Okay, so actually, you were saying that threshold does refer to the zenith the high points of arousal that then potentiate into deactivation. And then you last week also were using threshold to refer to the point of transition between deactivation and activation. And then I think you were now saying it's the first that's the official organic intelligence meaning, and the second you were just using the threshold to also refer to the transition. This is very technical and linguistic, but actually I think there sometimes, more than sometimes, somewhat frequently, the term threshold, as used by Steve Hoskinson, the founder, and other senior OI coaches, it is used just to refer to change, which by the way annoys me, but I'm going to set that aside. My irritate. Sorry, let me get back on track. So the, sometimes when you say what the hell is a threshold, they'll say it's any change. So for example, it would be like there's a kid. Okay, so it could refer to the kid gets excited about playing a game and then it reaches a threshold and then he starts relaxing. Or it could refer to what you were referring to as the transition between deactivation and activation. Like the kid is resting from playing softball and then now he wants to go up and play whatever, like activation's coming back. So the rest reach a threshold. I think threshold is used that way sometimes in organic
Yeah,
intelligence.
sure.
And let me add to this, I have been wondering, so aren't there or couldn't there be changes that are not specifically changes from activation to deactivation or deactivation to activation, but you would still call the shift a threshold? For example, a kid is playing a video game. He's bored of that video game, so he just stops and then changes to a new video game. Or I have a certain image in my mind, let's say a basketball or the beach, and then it lasts for 30 seconds and then it disappears. Wasn't that a threshold? It was a shift. So if you use threshold in the most encompassing sense to mean any change, it would include activation to deactivation. It would include deactivation to activation, and it wouldn't include like everything, any kind of shift, whether or not it's an activation or whether or not it's a shift between activation to deactivation or the opposite. Okay, so
Yeah, no, that's a
yeah,
great question.
okay.
And in my understanding from what I've heard Steve say, like in the early trainings with them, was the idea that a threshold is a change of state. So if it's a change of state, then we are talking about not just any change, anything that changes a threshold. It would be, yep, the state is in a state of activation or it's in a state of deactivation. And so in that sense, it would relate to thresholds in organic intelligence would relate to the state changes that happen. Now, that begs the question of are we talking about state changes, like you said, from activation to deactivation? And does that include from deactivation to activation? So in other
Wait,
words, you hit the top and then it changes, that's a threshold. What about coming down and then it becomes activation? Is that a threshold? I think that's a worthwhile conversation,
I
technically.
I want to check what is a state because I feel like that is going to raise. What do you mean? I know state is a concept frequently used in organic intelligence. As I was using it, as I think about it, if a kid is playing a video game and then gets bored of it and changes to a different one, or if I have a certain image or an emotion and that or thought and then I and the thought goes away or the emotion changes, that is a state change. But I don't put a lot of weight on state. I just it's just my I'm there's a shift in my experience. So when you say a threshold is a change specifically in state, what do you mean by state? I think that's
Yeah.
where, yeah.
Yeah. And so my understanding of state, again, is not just any old change. Because you can go from, bench pressing to leg press, and your state is going to still be by and large in a higher arousal state, even though I change from one exercise to another exercise, a different muscle to another muscle. But we do want to look at these things as fractals, right? Like, so if I was talking just on the muscle level, I'm doing a bench press. Those chest muscles, the bicep, tricep, they're working. And then as soon as I stop and switch to the leg press, those muscles aren't working. So in terms of the muscles, the state changes for the bench press muscles. And then now when I go to the leg press, well, the muscles of the leg press, those are going to go through a state change. So in that sense, that's happening on from a cellular level on up.
I was going to, yes, yes. I had the question in mind. It, are we saying, or is the entire organism just simply in activation or deactivation in any given moment? Like it's just one thing I'm activating, I'm deactivating, or are there aspects of the organism that can be activating, aspects that are not? And you've raised that issue. Like I'm doing my upper body workout, I'm doing my lower body workout.
Right?
Why is everything so complex, Rena? It's
Because we are complex beings.
yeah, yeah. Uh, But were you using? But okay, you said a state. You seem to say a state. By state, you mean the current level of arousal in well in any organism, I guess, but just in a human being, the current level of arousal. I'm with you, but let me just say, or I want to think more about that, even though we don't have time as usual. But I was thinking a state is your isoma in the moment. And I didn't define isoma for those who are new. Let me just not do that right now. But I was it's your isoma in the moment, and then so if in the next moment an image goes away or a sensation emerges, that's a different state. It's just it's isoma flow, isoma changing. So is my understanding of state incorrect? Have I been or is state? Well, there's also the issue that Steve uses words in different ways sometimes, and it's hard to like get a canonical, clear cut. What is this? What is this? Is it not that? But can you speak to that? Like, am I coming
Yeah.
from just an alien context in understanding a state as an isoma state? I mean, that's how I've been using it throughout.
Yeah, I actually so I'm I I'm thinking, right? So I gave the example of the muscles. You could say that's happening on a cellular level. Every thought requires a nerve that has to fire and then it has to depotentiate, right? So these are happening, in the trillions every probably second of our existence. And so when we're talking about states, we're not talking about at the cell level or the muscle level, at the organ level, or even necessarily just at the brain functioning level. We're talking about, and you're alluding to this, the overall complex that I call Rena and you call Bach. Like that overall system, and you use the isoma. And so just to name
Yeah.
the channels of being that organic intelligence kinds of delineates is the images, sensations, orientation, meaning, and affect. Right. And so all of those together creates a configuration in any given moment. And so a state would be the configuration of that isoma, which is an overall way of being.
Yeah, this is getting, I want to challenge or question, even though a few minutes left. And I know to my audience, this is getting very hairy. And I see why relaxation is hard. Just I'm feeling you. I'm vibing with that. My state is there. But I would say when you say a state is a configuration of isoma, I know Steve says configuration, configuration, configuration. I've always wondered, is that just fluff? Because isn't it just my isoma? What is it? What are you adding by saying the configuration of the isoma? It's just in this moment of time, I have whatever's happening in the orientation channel, the image channel, sensation channel, thought channel, meaning, or emotion channel, affect. So
Mhm.
I'm also worried that I don't want to just close out on a note of we just opened a can of worms and didn't and it just creates more
We
questions.
have
But
we haven't answered our question of why
yeah,
it's hard
yeah,
to relax yet.
yeah. But anyway, so and I may be getting too pedantic and technical for the purpose of the live stream. Although this is a free association conversation, it's unplanned, so I don't, it's just risk taking.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, and part of what's fun about our
so
conversations is we discover like points to get more clarity about and develop, because organic intelligence itself is an ongoing developing
okay.
understanding of what it means to be human.
Let,
And so, yeah, go ahead.
let me ask you this. Suppose you and I are on Zoom as we are, and then I just by impulse, I'm orienting to the trees outside. And then let's say I orient for about 15 seconds, and then I naturally feel done and I turn back to you. Was that a threshold, that impulse to move from looking at the trees to looking back at you? Was that a threshold? Would or
I,
yeah,
I would say of sorts, yes.
of sort? Yeah. So
Right.
I think that the term threshold is used in different ways in organic intelligence.
Right. Because there's the methodological way,
Okay.
right? And then we're trying to, understand that through a scientific understanding, right? Because if you think about just the breath and you inhale, that would be akin to activation or arousal. And at some point, the gases in your body won't let you keep inhaling. And so that will cause you to hit a threshold so that you can begin exhaling. But the same is going to happen on the other end. As you exhale, the gases are going to become a certain state that is going to require you to inhale to change the state. And so, if we think on that level, yes, there's a state change on both ends of the spectrum. And one could talk about that as a threshold. So, in other words, it's challenging because on a metaphor like this, we're talking about like up and down as if it's spatially
Yeah.
oriented, and it's not spatially oriented. It's a 100% 3D holographic orientation. So you could take activation, deactivation, and just flip it on its head, and it's the same thing. Just it would be just different on the page.
Okay. I let me go a few minutes overtime unless you're rushed for
Sure.
something.
I'm good. Yeah.
I'm going to go a few minutes overtime because I at least want to, when you just talked to me about the idea of the cool down period possibly involving periods of activation all, on the way down, like corresponding to thresholds of relaxation, threshold, the cool down, reaching activation, another threshold, and then that activation completes, and then there's cool down, and then more activation down to the baseline. I was wondering whether you were introducing maybe a novel idea that is worth comparing to organic intelligence proper. Uh, so I'm just going to say something. I'm not saying it's organic intelligence. I'm not saying it's what you're saying, Rena. I'm not. Let me just throw this idea out there for, and this is primarily aimed at those of you who are organic intelligence coaches or deep in the organic intelligence field and thinking deeply about this stuff. So let me say this. In standard organic intelligence theory, there are three ways to sabotage the organic intensity threshold cycling process. The three ways are: first, you don't reach the organic intensity threshold. The intensity does not go high enough to reach it. The second way is it exceeds it. It goes over threshold. That's the second way. The third way is it doesn't complete the rest period. You prematurely activate once you've begun the cool down period. So those are the three ways of not of sabotaging the reaching and resting from organic intensity thresholds. That's organic intelligence. Now, when you introduce the idea of thresholds on the rest period, thresholds where the rest pauses for a moment and then there's activation, I wondered whether you were saying something different and new, which was, but then as you were explaining it, it felt like you were just explaining the premature activation. But if you weren't, but if that was not the case, the different idea would be on the cool down, on during the rest period, there are natural thresholds where the cooldown will switch to activation, and the activation just needs to like. I feel like this is so abstract, but I reached I'm processing a date I had with someone, and then I reached a threshold, and then I'm gonna relax. Oh, but what if he doesn't like me? What if he doesn't like me? Oh, that's okay, and then more relax. Okay, what if I don't like him? What if I don't like him? Okay, then more relax, and then oh, what if what if he has to move to Antarctica? And then okay, more relax. But those periods of activation, on one interpretation I had of what you were saying, are normal and natural. They are not premature activation that corresponds to the failure of rest period. That's the idea I thought you might be introducing and as worth thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just wanted to say
Yeah,
that.
sure. Sure.
Okay,
And that example works.
okay.
Um, I'm thinking of another example, like how it can get conditioned in the physiology to be difficult to complete a rest period. And I'm thinking of someone I know, and he can tell the story about, and this is a story that's been told to him, that when he was breastfeeding and would fall asleep, his mom didn't want him to fall asleep yet because she wanted him to keep feeding. So then she would tickle the bottom of his feet so that he would wake up and then start breastfeeding again. And this was a pattern that went on for 9, 12 months. I don't know how long he breastfed, but there would be this pattern of if he ever fell asleep, at least while breastfeeding, he would be startled awake. And it doesn't take too much to understand how that can create and set up in somebody's physiology this trait of having a hard time allowing the system to come down, 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 down. Because if I
Yeah.
do, I'm going to get tickled and startled awake. And so the biology is not going to let it come down. And it cannot let it come down by, say, like you were giving, right? If, like, let's say it's not you, but let's say it was you, right? If this was you, it would look like I'm starting to come down, and all of a sudden I have, well, maybe I don't like him, and then it's starting to come down, like, oh, maybe he doesn't like me. Oh, it's starting to come down, right? Like there'd be these interruptions to the coming down. In your case, those interruptions are coming in the meaning channel, but they could also come in the
Mm.
sensation channel.
Interesting.
Like you're
Yeah.
starting to rest, like come down, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, my heartbeat just did a jump. right? And you're like, oh, okay, well, what was that, right? And then you start to rest again, and then you feel that heartbeat weird. It just feels weird to you, or something like that, right? Like there
Yeah.
can be a sensation jolt that happens, or you can start to rest, and every time you start to rest, you start crying, right? Like so, there's ways that the physiology can learn that as the system's coming down, then some kind of activation comes in instead because that's what's been conditioned into it.
Which would be the classic premature activation that interferes with the rest process, right?
Right, right.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Rena, as usual. Let me do my talking talking us up here. Um, so thank you, everyone. To learn more about either of us and the coaching we offer, there will be links in the description. To learn more about organic intelligence, you can read my writing on Substack, link in the description, and explore my video library on YouTube, including the short videos. I meticulously craft my Substack posts and YouTube videos to present substantive content that's clear, direct, and concise. Thank you, Rena, as usual. I look forward to our next conversation. To everyone, when in doubt, orientation and pleasure. Okay, but Rena, any last words here?
We'll go with that. And
Yeah.
if you're able to rest, rest. We probably don't get enough of it. And if that's too difficult, well, find an organic intelligence coach and they'll help you support that.
And per last week, if you can't relax, don't.
Well, that too.
But do. Okay.